This is the Heroes for Freedom podcast. I'm Rick Robison. Major Ruby Bradley, the most decorated woman in American military history. Her story can be found in our new Heroes for Freedom series. This is Volume 1. Hers is actually in Volume 2, which is now available. In a dimly lit, small hut, dingy hut deep within the jungles of the Philippines, as World War II suddenly breaks out, she was in fact surrounded by wounded soldiers and the swelling rumble she could hear of Japanese artillery in the distance moving closer. She was a lean, calm figure, and you could see her moving deliberately and skillfully from wounded soldier to wounded soldier through this building chaos. With the precision and skill of a surgeon, but also the compassion of a saint, she tended to the injured, one struggling soldier after another. Supplies had long run out. Lieutenant Ruby Bradley would never give up her boys. This young woman was dedicated, and she was there because she wanted to be. And then she heard the officer say to her, "You can go ahead and leave. You can evacuate, Lieutenant Bradley," a senior officer told her. "It's not your fight anymore," the fellow added. But Ruby glanced up at the man, her face lined with exhaustion and now irritation at the suggestion. Her large eyes, however, were sharp and resolute. She said, "It's my fight till the fight's over." And then she paused just long enough to stare off into the jungle. Death and hell were rushing their way, and their outnumbered men could not stop this. But Lieutenant Ruby Bradley, U.S. Army nurse, would never be broken. In fact, she would later become the most decorated woman, as I mentioned, in American military history, embodying the ideals of compassion, of strength, and courage. Yet she would soon face the fires of hell in an effort to protect these soldiers and civilians, the ones she served and the ones she loved. But where did she start? How did she get into what she was doing? Well, she was born December 19th, 1907, in Spencer, West Virginia. Ruby Bradley grew up in a small farming community. She always said, that if you want to know what real work is, grow up on a farm. Ruby learned quickly how to care for the animals in the farm that they raised, how to take care of brothers and sisters, how to mend them, and how to mend the farm to keep it going, to keep everyone and everything healthy and working. As a girl, she mastered an abiding sense of responsibility and loyalty. Perhaps it was the quiet, calm strength of her upbringing that prepared her so well for the darkest days of the war soon to come that she would face. As a young woman, however, she wanted more than what the farm could offer, and she'd earned a teaching certificate and then enrolled right away in nursing school. She had a passion to serve others, but especially her country. So she joined the U.S. Army Nurse Corps in 1934, a decision that would take her far from the quiet hills of West Virginia and into the heart of some of the most foreign and brutal conflicts of the 20th century. As mentioned, Ruby's greatest challenge swept over her with the outbreak of World War II. In December of 1941, she was still young. She was stationed at Camp John Hay in the Philippines when Japanese forces launched a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor. Then, almost immediately, this brutal enemy moved en masse against the American forces in the Philippines. Her field hospital was soon overrun. In fact, she was taken prisoner by the Japanese. She would spend the next 3 years or more as a prisoner of war at the infamous Santo Tomas internment camp in Manila. Santo Tomas was literally hell on earth for the Americans held there. There were military as well as civilians that had been captured. Food was scarce and dangerously unhealthy. Diseases were rampant, and death was a constant companion for everyone. Yet in this bleak, brutal camp, Ruby's dedication to her fellow prisoners did not waver. Known as the Angel in Fatigues, she placed her own well-being on hold for those 3 terrible years, doctoring the sick and wounded, performing surgeries and other medical procedures without adequate medical supplies or equipment. She did what she had to do. With resources running out, Ruby, in fact, would steal food and medicine from Japanese storage areas so she could nurture the sick and the women and children who were interred with her in this terrible camp. Her fearless defiance of the enemy at great risk to herself and her unwavering compassion for the weak and vulnerable made her a beacon of hope when for most of the prisoners, hope had long since fled. But the war dragged on. Conditions in the camp worsened. Disease was rampant. By the time American forces liberated Santo Tomas in early 1945, over 3 long years had passed, and Lieutenant Bradley had lost 40 pounds and was nearly fatally malnourished. Despite her weakened physical state, She'd saved countless of lives through her expertise, but more so, her fiery determination to help as many possible to survive. Most of her commanders at that point expected, with the war ending and that she'd survived so long as a POW in such rat-infested conditions, that this would guarantee pretty much for sure that Major Ruby Bradley, now a major, would flee the jungles and take the first fast boat home to the friendly, scenic mountains of West Virginia. No, not Ruby. Instead, she rose to the next challenge, to protect and serve the wounded in the next conflict, the Korean War, coming just 5 years after the end of World War II. By this time, Ruby had risen to the rank of major, as I mentioned, in the medical corps. This was a testament really to her leadership, experience under fire, but most of all, an incredible skill to get the job done with no matter what she had to work with. In Korea, Ruby once again found herself in the thick of battle. She was assigned, of course, to the 8th Army's 8076 Mobile Army Surgical Hospital, or MASH unit, which provided frontline medical care for wounded soldiers. The conditions were brutal in Korea. Freezing temperatures in winter, ice and snow, scorching heat in summer, relentless enemy fire, artillery barrages, and the always primitive frontline medical facilities that she had to deal with. Yet her resolve never wavered. In Korea, she earned a new nickname, Angel in Combat Boots, and she lived up to her reputation, which had spread throughout the Army. She was known for exceptional, rock-solid courage. On more than one occasion, she risked her life to save her wounded boys. Her most famous act of bravery in Korea came during the heroic but tragic retreat from the Chosin Reservoir region in December of 1950. It was a brutal stage of the conflict of the war. Faced with a rapidly advancing Chinese and North Korean enemy, and with little time to evacuate the wounded under her care, Major Bradley refused to leave their MASH unit until every single one of her patients had been safely evacuated. She loaded the wounded onto trucks, helicopters, planes, anything they could to get them out of there, and she stayed behind until all were successfully moved, protecting the lives of over 100 soldiers that she refused to abandon in some of the most harshly intense winter conditions of the war. As we mentioned, she was heavily rewarded with medals and decorations. Of course, she never seemed to be too excited about that, but she had many, 34 in fact. And by the time Major Ruby Bradley had retired in 1963, she had been awarded so many different citations and medals, including, but not limited to, the Legion of Merit. She received 2 Bronze Stars. She received 2 Army Commendation Medals, and the Florence Nightingale Medal, which is the highest international honor, very, very prestigious honor or award that's especially bestowed upon a nurse in line of duty in combat, and many more medals. Anyway, Ruby's medals, though numerous, they tell but a part of her story. Acts of individual bravery were central to the way she served, and personal sacrifice and solid dedication was what got her out of the cot every morning, no matter how she felt. But as life teaches us, the level of dedication, that level of dedication, always comes at a price. For Ruby's devotion in the face of overwhelming adversity offered a touch of the celestial, while pushing back against the Hades, the hell that swept over Korea's battlefields for 3 bloody years. Ruby's actions transcended the war zone, embodying the very finest moral qualities of a military nurse. Most of all, however, she nurtured an unshakable faith in the eternal worth of each individual life, even when all around her were doing everything to cheapen that life or to snuff it out. And truly, she left a lasting legacy. Ruby Bradley retired from the Army in 1963 with the rank of full bird colonel. Her post-military life and retirement was peaceful. She spent her last years in the mountains of West Virginia, the state where her remarkable journey began 30 years previous. And in spite of all she accomplished, she remained humble and unassuming, seldom commenting on the war and her years of extraordinary service. To this day, Colonel Ruby Bradley's story continues to inspire generations of military women who see her an incredible example, as the incredible example she was, of what can be achieved with courage even under fire. Ruby passed away in 2002 at the age of 94. Her funeral at Arlington National Cemetery was attended by hundreds of mourners and admirers, including many nurses and even those she had saved on the battlefield, all gathering to pay their final respects and to be inspired once more by the life of this incredible woman. Taps were played, and their haunting sound echoed out over the sprawling beautiful grounds of Arlington. As the service concluded, many felt that the angel in combat boots would have a lasting influence upon all in attendance, for her legacy would continue long after she was laid to rest. We learn many lessons from the life of Colonel Ruby Bradley's life. Today, I believe, the ideal of heroism is too often misunderstood. Many times, in fact, it is denigrated and diminished. The meanings of words change as well as society and culture transform. For example, the word rescue, which Ruby was involved in hands-on many times, but the word rescue once meant something far more noble and deep, even self-sacrificing, than it is often used today. Additionally, Colonel Ruby Bradley's life teaches us that greatness is more often than not found in the quiet acts of courage when facing down evil. True courage means refusing to give in, even when confronting seemingly impossible odds. The heroine is often a calm but tenacious woman, giving up personal security, comfort, and well-being so that the mission and those who risk their lives on the front lines might survive and succeed to victory. A tireless commitment to one's duty in the face of certain death. Ruby confronted such challenges many times. She demonstrated graphically that a woman's contribution in war is too often overlooked or minimized, in fact. Colonel Ruby Bradley proved that women have been and continue to be essential to the success of military operations. Her story deserves to be retold, but most of all, remembered. Colonel Ruby Bradley, we at the Legacy Generation honor and salute you. We appreciate your wonderful service. I'm Rick Robison, and this is the Heroes for Freedom podcast.